Jason leaned against the cafe counter, tapping his fingers idly, waiting for his coffee. He was deep in thought, reminiscing about the past few months. Life in Lagos had become a whirlwind since he'd met Sophia, a woman with an undeniable allure, carrying a mystery that had captivated him. Jason was known for his practical nature, but something about her had broken through his walls. Sophia was nothing like the people in his social circle. She had an edge that hinted at a life far from his own well-ordered world. From the moment he met her, Jason knew she was different, but he couldn't bring himself to pull away. Against all rationality, he believed he could help her. He'd convinced himself that maybe, with time, she could leave her past behind. When Jason approached her with the idea of a committed relationship, Sophia had hesitated, as if she couldn't trust the promise of a better future. But eventually, she'd agreed, saying he made her feel like she could start anew. They shared nights of deep conversation, mornings of quiet companionship, and fleeting moments of joy, building a world where it felt like she might truly be his. Jason poured his energy into helping Sophia create a life away from her old world. He introduced her to his friends, taking her to art galleries and elegant dinners. He noticed how her eyes would brighten each time they shared something new, as if she were seeing herself through his eyes, someone who could be loved, trusted, and respected. Sophia seemed to embrace the changes eagerly. She even started attending workshops, picking up painting and poetry. Jason found her passion infectious. He was convinced she was leaving her past behind, and he took pride in knowing he was the one to help her do it. But some nights, Sophia would retreat into herself, a dark cloud dimming the light in her eyes. Jason could tell that she was wrestling with something, but she'd wave away his concern with a soft smile, saying, "I'm fine, Jason. Just the past trying to creep back." He'd hold her hand tightly then, assuring her she didn't have to face it alone. Slowly, he let down his guard. His belief in Sophia became unwavering. Each small victory, each step she took toward the life they dreamed of, fortified his trust. It was a beautiful illusion, a fragile hope he'd woven around them. A crisp morning breeze met Jason as he stepped out of the apartment, suitcase in hand. He was leaving on a 3-day business trip, and as always, he hated leaving Sophia. She had seen him off with a warm hug and a playful, "I'll try not to miss you too much." He chuckled, feeling the warmth of her embrace, already looking forward to returning. On his way to the airport, Jason received a call from his office. His boss's voice crackled over the line, letting him know the flight had been cancelled. Jason felt a surge of excitement instead of disappointment. He couldn't wait to see Sophia's face when he walked back through the door. The thought of spending the day with her filled him with anticipation. Turning the car around, he headed back to the apartment, a bouquet of roses he'd picked up on impulse resting in the passenger seat. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his heart beating with eagerness. Sophia had no idea he was coming back, he couldn't wait to surprise her. But as he approached their door, Jason noticed something odd. The lock was slightly ajar, and faint sounds drifted through the hallway. His heart sank as a sickening realization started to settle in his stomach, but he pushed the thought away. Maybe she was watching a movie, he told himself, clinging to any explanation. He opened the door and stepped inside. The roses fell to the floor as he took in the scene before him. Jason's worst fears crystallized in a single, agonizing moment. Standing there, he saw a stranger in his bed, their bed, with Sophia, tangled in sheets meant only for them. The air seemed to thicken, suffocating him as the sound of laughter and murmurs abruptly stopped, leaving a heavy silence. Sophia's eyes widened as she met Jason's gaze. Shock flashed across her face, quickly followed by a look of shame, but she didn't say a word. The man in bed with her scrambled up, grabbing his clothes and muttering an apology as he left in a hurried mess. Jason didn't even register his presence, his entire world had collapsed around Sophia. Sophia clutched the sheet, covering herself, trying to say something, but words failed her. Jason's voice was barely a whisper as he forced out, "Why?" The simple question carried the weight of his shattered dreams, the trust he'd so willingly given her. Her lips trembled as she replied, "Jason, I'm so sorry. I thought you were gone." But her words felt empty, meaningless. Jason realized in that moment that this wasn't a lapse of judgment. Sophia had never truly let go of her old life. The betrayal cut deeply, not only because of what he'd seen but because of how foolish he'd been to believe she could change. He had let himself dream, ignore his instincts, and now he was paying the price. Jason left the apartment, wandering the city streets in a daze. The city lights blurred around him, echoing the brokenness he felt inside. All he could see was her face, the way she'd looked at him with regret instead of remorse. He'd given her everything, his love and trust, and it had meant nothing. When he finally returned to the apartment, Sophia was gone. She'd left him a note on the table, her familiar handwriting scrawled in haste. It read, "I'm sorry for hurting you, Jason. I tried to change, but maybe I'm just not the person you thought I could be." Her words stung, but they didn't surprise him. He'd loved the version of her that existed only in his mind, a vision he'd constructed and projected onto her, hoping it would be enough to bridge the gap between them. Days turned into weeks, and Jason slowly began to pick up the pieces of his life. He threw himself into work, spending late nights at the office, trying to drown out the memories. Yet no amount of distraction could silence the hollow ache in his chest. In time, friends reached out, trying to support him, but Jason felt lost. It was as if he had lost not just Sophia but a part of himself. He wondered if he'd ever be able to trust anyone the same way again. The experience had left him wary, questioning whether he'd ever truly known the woman he loved. Jason eventually moved to a new apartment across town, leaving the old memories behind. He learned to live with the scars, carrying the pain as a reminder of the price he'd paid for trusting too freely. The betrayal had changed him, but he vowed to let it make him wiser, not bitter. As the city moved on around him, Jason found solace in small things, a quiet evening walk, the sunrise over the buildings, laughter shared with friends. He realized that healing didn't mean forgetting but learning to live with the lessons etched in his heart. Sophia became a memory, a chapter in his life that he'd once thought would be his future. But as he looked out over the city skyline, he knew he was ready to let go and move forward, one day at a time. This story, even with its heartbreak, served as a reminder for Jason to protect his heart but not to stop believing in love entirely. He learned that real change had to come from within and that sometimes, no matter how much you love someone, you can't save them from themselves.